So we're fleshing out our discussion from yesterday of why so many deer now, why not so many deer in 1750, and we're 1750 is pre-statehood, so this is statehood. So 1750, there are no white folks in Ohio. There might be some real explorer types, but for the most part, we're looking at native populations at that point. The Desert Southwest is making the argument, and I am not saying if this argument is right or wrong. What I am going to encourage other tables to do is to think about their argument and think about whether or not it lines up with what you're thinking, and if not, what holes you would like to poke in their argument. Okay? So they're saying, in general, more predators. Human predators, because there are no grocery stores. If people want to eat, they got to kill it, they got to find it, they got to dig it up, they got to trap it, they got to hunt it, they got to do something. Plus, more other kinds of predators. I'm not drawing a wolf right now. I'm just not having that good a day. But they're saying in general, more things want to kill Bambi, and I'm putting a target on Bambi. Okay. Other arguments. What's another table think? Anybody got other ideas? Okay, so I've got two tables who are saying that in general, the reason that there are more deer now than there were in 1750 is 1750, the world was just a much worse place for deer. Many more things wanted to kill them. Two tables agree with that. Anybody have an issue with that? Anybody think that that's totally bogus and that is not part of the reason? Okay. Were there any tables that really felt like, oh my God, I have no clue what, I don't know. How would I know that? Okay. That's okay too. You are allowed to think that, and you're allowed to think anything you want. Obviously, you have free control of your own brain matter. But yeah, it's okay to come to something and go, oh my God, I have no clue. What process do you take when you arrive at that position? I mean, one is like, okay, crap, I give up. But the other might be something more along the lines of, well, what do I know about deer? Well, what do deer eat? What eats deer? What makes life good for deer? What makes life bad for deer? That might be another way to come to it. I don't know if this is just a lack of courage, or if really only one person said they looked at this and went, got no clue. And I suspect the numbers might be a little higher. I don't know. I do have a lot of tables who aren't jumping on any, real options, so I think only one person's brave enough. But yeah, when you come up against something where you really have no clue, you kind of got to think your way into it. You got to start asking questions of it. Well, what do I know? What do I know? Well, how's this like that? Okay, so nobody else has any other ideas? Because this is part of the picture. What else?
We were thinking like maybe the environment was different. Like it wasn't as thick now. There wasn't as much as they eat. Maybe it was like open woods where they don't really like to be.
Okay. So we're thinking that maybe the environment changed. In 1750, here's the thing. Ohio was deep, old-growth forest. This part of Ohio had no clearings. There's a fantastic series of books. I can't remember the author. When they cleaned out the library at the old building, they were throwing them away. I gathered them all up and took them home. I rescued them. And it's a trilogy written by somebody about early settlers to eastern Ohio. And the first one is called The Trees, the Fields, the Town. And in The Trees, it is the story of a family who comes over the Appalachians to settle in Ohio in the 1780s, pre-statehood. They settle around Marietta. And the descriptions in the book are very consistent with what people talk about in their letters, in their diaries that have survived. People talk about the terror and the oppression and the horror of these dark, 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 dark woods. It is dark all the time. There is no light. There is no clearing. There is no relief from this oppressive darkness. Oh my God, it's like living in a cave. It's horrifying to them. They're coming from the relatively settled East Coast, where there are cities and towns and farm fields, and it looks like a human landscape. They get out here, and this is wilderness. It is deep, dark, and terrifying. You had 11 children. What happened to 4 of them? They got dragged off by panthers going to the well for water. Oh. What happened to that cow you had? The wolves killed her. It's a world that's full of predators. It is deep and oppressive and dark and shadowy. And it's open woods. It's old-growth forest. There's not a lot of stuff growing on the ground. So let's look at a picture of what that might look like. On the first point that a couple of tables mentioned, and I put that in second. I'm sorry. Do you want to? So yeah, remember, I said, we systematically killed everything else that wanted to eat whitetail. So we wiped out all their natural predators. This lovely wolf here is standing in for all the predators that used to live in Ohio. The mountain lions and the bears and the wolves and everything else that used to take out deer. So there's that. And Native Americans hunted deer. Native Americans in this part of the world did rely heavily on deer. They were a really important animal for them. But the other thing that we don't tend to think about, this is the sort of harder point. Once settlers got here, once European Americans arrived in North America, we did something that was really important for deer. We killed every tree we could. Between I used to know this by heart, 1790 and 1803, so 13 years. You have all been alive for more than 13 years. You can imagine what a 13-year span is. Ohio lost 96% of its trees. 13 years. And we're not talking about chainsaws. Do you know how they killed them? It's called girdling. You chop all the bark at the base of the tree in about a 4-inch band, and the tree dies standing. Because we're talking about trees that 3 of you couldn't put your arms around. How do you cut that down with a little tiny axe? Well, you kill it first. And you let it stand there dead, and then it's nice dry wood when you finally do push it over. And then you grub out the roots. And in these series of books that I'm talking about, The Trees, the Fields, the Town, the main character talks about fighting the forest, fighting the woods for every inch of cornfield, because they are out there attacking tree roots every single year because the forest wants to come back. So they're fighting this battle against the forest to get rid of it. And they did. They did a great job. So we go from something that looks like this. Now this is a contemporary picture from Ohio. In 1803, it would have been mostly farm fields. They didn't leave a whole lot. I mean, like I said, from 1790 to 1803, they lost 96% of our trees. And so they didn't leave a whole lot of patches of wood. Well, it turns out deer really like meadow habitat and edge habitat and brushy habitat. If you're somebody who hunts, you know this. You know that they like that low growth. They can eat down here. We saw a buck standing up on his hind legs in the movie. That's kind of tough. You want to stretch that high to get something to eat? I don't. I'd really like my food down at my height. I live with a large dog, and my child is well trained that if you put food at dog height, you lose. If food is at my height, you lose. No, I don't take her food, I promise. Well, if it's really good, I do. But anyway, only some things. The habitat conditions in 1750 in Ohio were not all that awesome for deer. Now, we wrecked the habitat for a whole lot of animals. We wrecked habitat for bears and for wolves and for a whole lot of songbirds. We completely drove lots of species out of existence in Ohio because they depended on deep, rich, old-growth woods. Bye-bye! We're going to cut down all the trees. Good luck. But for deer, woo-hoo! Party! We improved the habitat significantly. And so there was this period post-statehood where deer populations did rise. Probably never to the levels seen today. And I cannot find good numbers on what population levels would have been like, say 1800 to 1850. I've tried, believe me. But, Then we start the opposite trend of killing them all until by 1909, there are no deer in Ohio. So we improved the habitat for them dramatically. Then we killed them all. Then we reintroduced them. And today, the habitat in Ohio is pretty darn good for deer. That mixed kind of environment where you've got fields, you've got crop residue here. I bet if you were an enterprising deer or turkey or anything else, you could probably find some nice corn on the ground. That's a good source of fat for winter. You'll see deer sort of working over field residue. We've got all these edges, we've got fields, we've got a nice setup for deer. It's a pretty good place for deer. Plus, the only predators left for them, for the most part, we'll talk about eastern coyotes a little bit later. For the most part, we are their predators. And I'm not sure, it would be a good number to know what percentage of Ohioans hunt, but it's pretty small. It has declined, and Division of Wildlife, even when I worked there 20 years ago, was talking about the fact that fewer people hunt and fish today than did 50 years ago. And there's this concern that people aren't getting outside. And that's why I like teaching here, because a lot of you do get outside, and that's good. Even if you don't hunt or fish, you go outside. So yeah, we've improved conditions for deer in Ohio. Okay, what I'm going to do is we're going to pause there. I'll actually stop this as part 1.